Madam Chairman, thank you. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. I want to follow up on Senator Hagan's, at least initially, line of question. She generally addressed what I wanted to address in regard to the small business lending program, the inability for bankers to know the reason for the outcome. I just would tell you, Mr. Secretary, that at least in visiting with our bankers, they were told by their regulators, their primary regulators, they qualified, that their application would be supported. And the regulators then, when the denial occurred, you were the one delivering the denial, not the regulator, and they couldn't get any answers from the folks who told them that they were going to receive these funds. My understanding, as of this morning, is that the Treasury Department, has now notified those who were rejected to have an opportunity now to sit down and have a conversation with a person, I assume at Treasury, but maybe it's a regulator, to explain the denial. And I suppose the other complicating factor is that at the stage in which the denial occurred, so close to the end of the program, that there was no effective way to appeal, even if you could have sat down to talk to your regulator and say, what did I not do wrong? Let me tell you what we did differently, or you don't have the facts right. At this point, it's just too late because of the statutory conclusion of the program. Am I missing something?
No, I think you got it basically right. And you're right that as of today, we're informing under a communications approved by the primary supervisor the reasons why banks denied were denied. But let me just come back to the basic safeguards we used. Again, we didn't rely just on the judgment of the primary supervisor, bank supervisor. We relied on the judgment of a committee of their peers, so that because we wanted to protect banks from the risks that individual supervisors were too tough or too soft. And, the balance is not perfect, but, we were trying to be careful. And I think we got the balance broadly as good as we could have.
I want to have a couple of other questions semi-related to the topic of the day, and I'll not wander as far as my other colleagues have gone. But the President said something about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that caught my attention and was troublesome to me. In regard to if the CFPB was in existence, Bank of America would not have been able to raise the charges upon its customers, as has been so prevalent in the news in recent weeks. Is there something in the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau that allows a regulator to make a determination in regard to the fees charged by a bank?
I draw your attention carefully to the statements that the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, made about that basic issue. And let me tell you what our objectives are and what the President's objectives are. Again, we want to take a system where there was terrible protection for consumers, very uneven, poorly enforced, people very vulnerable to fraud and abuse, and try to make sure that they have a much better understanding about what they're paying for financial services, whether it's for credit or a payment service. And that requires much more transparency and simplicity in their basic fees. And we're making some progress in that direction, but we got a ways to go. So the basic approach we're trying to do is to give consumers better capacity to choose and to try to encourage banks to be more explicit and clear and simple about the basic charges that accompany a mortgage loan or a credit card loan or an automobile loan or a checking account or a debit account.
Well, does the CFPB, is it granted authority in its toolbox? Does it have the ability to determine what a reasonable fee is to charge for
I don't believe
products?
so. I don't believe so, and that was not the intent of the law. But I'd be happy to ask my lawyers to tell you in more detail.
In part, that statement bothered me because it seems like a threat to banks. You didn't do what we wanted you to do, so we'll get you on the regulatory side. And it also bothered me to suggest that we are, again, creating another opportunity for a regulatory agency to be, in my view, price fixing between the relationship between a bank and its customer. The final topic I wanted to raise is I have worked at opening markets to Cuba since the year of 2000, food, medicine, agriculture, commodities. And the result of, at least in part of those efforts, has been the passage of TESRA. The Treasury Department has at OFAC the ability to develop regulations, and generally we have had some success in those markets. And this is related to job creation in the sense that it goes back to the administration's support, for example, for trade agreements with South Korea, Panama, Colombia. The more we export, in many instances, the greater opportunity we have for job creation. I've always thought we had a silly policy in regard to Cuba and a unilateral sanction, particularly when it comes to food and medicine. and agriculture commodities. If we're the only one implementing the sanction or enforcing the sanction, they're going to buy from somebody else. So we've worked to get the law changed. We were successful. Regulations were put in a prior administration that made those sales more difficult. There was a retrenchment. 20% less sales occurred to Cuba after that. Again, I would highlight this as sales for cash up front. And most recently, we were successful in adding to the Financial Services and General Government FY 012 an amendment that allows for direct payments. Again, payments cash up front, but to get rid of the letters of credit that current Treasury regulations require. The challenge now is, among other things, the politics of this issue is always challenging, but the administration has a SAP in regard to this bill, including objections to this amendment as written. And all I'm looking for you this morning, Mr. Secretary, and we're working very closely in trying to modify the language that is perhaps will ultimately be satisfactory with the Department of Treasury, and I'm just wanting to highlight this issue with you and ask for your continued commitment to work with me to find the right technical terminology that may be something that the administration would not include in their SAP in opposition.
I'm happy to give you that commitment to work with you on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chairman.